Welcome to the channel. Today, I am gonna explain historical adventure movie The Count of Monte Cristo that came out in 2002. It's a mix of history, betrayal, mystery, and jailbreak drama, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. It starts with a group of people sailing on a boat towards an island. These folks work on a merchant ship, and their captain is sick. So, they go to this island to get some medical help. When they reach the island, two friends named Edmund and Mondego get off the boat. This island is called Elba, and it's got some English soldiers who try to attack our heroes. But right before they capture them, guess who shows up? Napoleon Bonaparte himself. He's a famous French military leader who got kicked out of his position and was imprisoned on this island. The British soldiers didn't want him talking to anyone, so they were super strict about letting people in. Napoleon saves Edmund and Mondego from the soldiers and offers medical assistance for their captain. But here's the twist, Napoleon hands Edmund a letter and asks him to deliver it to someone named Monsieur Clarion. In fact, Monsieur Clarion will show up and will collect this letter. Napoleon also tells Edmund not to tell anyone, not even his friend Mondego. Well, when Napoleon gives Edmund the letter, Mondego secretly sees it. But Edmund doesn't tell him anything about it. Afterward, they have to leave the island because their captain passes away. They return to the shipping company, where Danglars, who was the ship's second in command, complains to the shipping company boss, Morel, that Edmund went to Elba against his orders. But Morel got impressed that Edmund tried hard to save his capitain's life. For this bravery act, he is promoted to captain over Danglars, who was senior to Edmund. Danglars was not able to digest Edmund's promotion, so he quits his job in anger. Edmund goes to his girlfriend Mercedes to share the good news about becoming a captain. But guess who's also there? Mondego. And he's super jealous of Edmund's success. Now, these three, Edmund, Mondego, and Mercedes, are childhood friends. Mercedes is in love with Edmund, but Mondego wants her for himself. However, Mercedes has already turned him down. So, when Edmund tells her he doesn't have a lot of money or a fancy wedding ring, she makes a thread ring and puts it on. She promises never to take it off because their love is real. But here's where things get complicated. Mondego, who comes from a rich family, meets Danglars and spills the beans about the letter that Napoleon gave to Edmund. He tells Danglars that Edmund hid it from him. As the story goes on, Edmund is having dinner with Mercedes and her father, all excited about his captaincy, when suddenly, the king's soldiers show up. They arrest Edmund and take him to the magistrate. The magistrate knows about the letter from Napoleon and asks Edmund about it. Edmund tells the truth and says he still has the letter and reveals he is illiterate, so don't know what is there in it. So, the magistrate reads it and realizes it contains information about the English soldiers' positions. It's a plan for Napoleon Bonaparte's escape. But when the magistrate asks who was supposed to collect the letter, Edmund mentions someone named Monsieur Clarion, but he doesn't really know him. Then the magistrate reacts like he knows this Monsieur Clarion, and he burns the letter immediately, and asks Edmund if you told anyone about this letter. He says he didn't even tell his friend. Magistrate says you suffered a lot because of me, that's why my people will drop you home, sits in his wagon and it is locked. He has been arrested. Edmund manages to escape briefly and runs to Mondego, asking for help because he's accused of treason. But instead of helping, Mondego reveals that he saw Edmund with the letter and read it while Edmund was asleep. Can you believe it? Edmund's best friend betrays him. Frightened Edmund got angry that his best friend betrayed him. He tried escaping from there, but Mondego has expertise in fencing and stopped him, and just like that, the soldiers catch Edmund again. They take him to an infamous prison called Chateau, which is located on an island. This prison is super dangerous, and nobody has ever escaped from there. Edmund is presented in front of the prison warden, who tells him that if he were guilty, he wouldn't be sent to that particular prison. But he is sent here for some mysterious reason, and then warden tortures him brutally till he is unconscious. So, Edmund ends up in a cell with a small window that barely lets in any light. There's a wooden door that opens only once a year, and the food is so bad that even dogs wouldn't eat it. He's all alone, with nobody to talk to, and he can't leave the cell. It's a tough and lonely life. Edmund spends 4 long years in that prison, enduring pain and suffering every day. He starts losing faith in God and even tries to hang himself. But it doesn't work because he is a loser and failed in even suicide. Over time, his hope diminishes, and all he has left is helplessness and despair. Warden appears every start of the year and beats Edmund, and this what every prisoner suffers here. Hopeless Edmund was lying in his cell. Then, a miracle happens. He hears a sound coming from the floor, and an old man's head pops up. Edmund is scared at first, thinking it's a ghost. But it turns out to be an old man. He calms down Edmund and introduces himself as Faria, who is imprisoned here from last 11 years. Faria tells Edmund his story and reveals that he's been digging that tunnel for the past 5 years, but seems he digged that in wrong direction and ended up in Edmund's cell. When Edmund took Faria to the window, he was overjoyed to see the sky after 11 long years. They made a plan to dig the tunnel together for 8 more years and escape. Edmund was sad because he had already been in prison for 4 years, and now he had to wait 8 more years. He had lost faith in God and lost his courage. But Faria told him that the pain would eventually end. Faria offered to teach Edmund math, science, reading, writing, and fencing. Faria used to be in Napoleon Bonaparte's army. After leaving the army, Edmund took up the position of a secretary for a wealthy man. Rumors spread that this man possessed a significant treasure. However, when the wealthy man passed away, Napoleon Bonaparte began pressuring Faria, suspecting him to have information about the whereabouts of the treasure. Despite Faria's repeated claims of ignorance, he was thrown into prison. Edmund now spends more time in Faria's cell, seeking solace and companionship in their shared predicament. Edmund and Faria dug the tunnel every day. In order not to be caught by the prison guards, Edmund had to go through the tunnel to his cell twice, once when the guards came to deliver food and the second time when they came to collect shit waste bucket. Both of them keep digging the tunnel together and used to put the dug soil in the shit bucket because the guards would never check that bucket. Edmund learned a lot from Faria and became skilled in many subjects. The guards never caught Edmund, and they kept digging the tunnel. One day, Edmund recounts his story to Faria. He reveals how initially the magistrate had acquitted him of all charges, but later betrayed him by planning his arrest. Edmund recalls the moment when he was asked about the letter from Napoleon Bonaparte, claiming he had burned it upon hearing the name Monsieur Clarion. Faria finds this act perplexing and suggests that there must be a hidden motive behind the magistrate's decision to destroy evidence of treason. As Edmund ponders over Faria's remark, he begins to piece together the puzzle. It dawns on him that the person who was meant to collect the letter is none other than the magistrate's own father, once a colonel in Napoleon Bonaparte's army. If his father had been accused of treason, the magistrate would have lost his position. Everything starts to make sense to Edmund now, and Faria commends him, applauding his growing understanding of the complexities of the world and the realm of diplomacy. Days passed and they continued to dig the tunnel. They reached the outside, near a tree's roots. They had to dig upwards for another month to complete the tunnel. But while digging, a tragic accident occurred. Debris fell on Faria, but Edmund managed to save him. Before dying, Faria revealed that he knew about a treasure and tells Edmund that there is an island called Monte Cristo off the coast of Italy where a treasure is hidden. He hands Edmund a map and urges him to use the treasure for the benefit of his people. Edmund feels hopeless, believing that the tunnel is closed and he can never escape. However, Faria, on the verge of death, encourages him to keep trying. After Faria passes away, the guards arrive and were discussing to dispose the dead body, which Edmund was listening that in the tunnel. The guards wrap Faria's lifeless body in a shroud and go to inform the warden. The warden arrives, and the guards chain the body while he secures the key to his waist. They plan to dispose of Faria's body by throwing it into the sea from the island. As they prepare to count to 3, something astonishing happens. A hand comes out from the dead body and grabs the key hanging on the warden's waist, and both the dead body and the warden fall into the sea. It turns out that the body inside the shroud is not Faria, but Edmund himself. Edmund had hidden Faria's body in his cell and cleverly took his place inside the shroud. Embracing his newfound freedom, Edmund breaks free from his chains and locks. The warden desperately tries to save himself from drowning, but Edmund seizes him and ensures he meets his demise in the sea. This marks Edmund's first act of revenge. He swims to another island, overwhelmed with joy at finally attaining freedom after years of captivity. However, upon arriving, he discovers a group of people sitting there, and to his surprise, they are all robbers. The leader of the robbers is about to kill one of his own comrades for betraying them. The comrades plead for mercy, hoping to spare their friend's life. Uncertain about what to do, the leader asks Edmund to engage in a knife fight with the traitor, else you will be killed. The winner will be accepted into their group. Edmund and the treacherous man named Jacopo engage in a fight. Eventually, Edmund defeats Jacopo but chooses not to kill him. Instead, he shows mercy and spares his life. Edmund then confronts the robbers and advises their leader not to kill Jacopo. He proposes that both he and Jacopo join their group and it will strengthen the group by adding 2 strong members. Leader agrees to it. Jacopo expresses his gratitude to Edmund and pledges his loyalty, declaring that he will remain devoted to him until death as a loyal companion and ally. Edmund now visits Morel, the owner of his old shipping company that made him captain at the beginning of the film, only to find that the company has been defunct and that Danglars has formed his own company. Edmund decided to visit Mr. Morel's house to see how he was doing. However, Mr. Morel didn't recognize him because many years had passed, and Edmund looked different now. Edmund introduced himself as one of Edmund's friend and asked about Edmund's family. Mr. Morel sadly told Edmund that his father had taken his own life because Edmund had been accused of treason. Edmund was shocked and asked who had accused his father. Mr. Morel explained that it was the magistrate who was there at the time and had arrested Edmund. The magistrate had later been promoted and became the chief prosecutor in Paris. Mr. Morel also mentioned that someone had killed the magistrate's father. Edmund was devastated to learn that his girlfriend, Mercedes, had married another man when she heard the news of Edmund's death. Now, she and her husband, Mondego, live in Paris. Edmund's heart was broken, and he felt a strong desire for revenge against all of them. But seeking revenge required a lot of money. So, Edmund decided to go to Monte Cristo Island with his friend Jacopo. They had Faria's map that could help them find a hidden treasure there. The treasure was in a cave. After some struggle, Edmund finds the treasure. It was a massive treasure with gold coins and boxes of jewels that seemed endless. Jacopo suggested going to Paris and killing everyone to take Edmund's revenge. However, Edmund had a different plan. He wanted them to suffer, just as he had suffered in jail. He wanted to ruin their lives. So, Edmund bought a rich man's property and became a count himself, changing his name to the Count of Monte Cristo. After becoming the Count of Monte Cristo, Edmund disguised himself as a wealthy man and organized a grand party. He invited all the influential families in the city, including the magistrate and Mondego. The magistrate attended the party with his wife, but Mondego and Mercedes didn't come because Mondego was involved in some criminal activities. Edmund knew that to get closer to Mondego, he needed to find his weakness. He discovered that Mondego had taken a huge loan from the bank. So, Edmund instructed his men to buy the bank and also convinced all the shipping companies to stop doing business with Mondego. While Edmund was waiting for an opportunity to approach Mondego, he learned that Mondego and Mercedes had a son named Albert. Edmund decided to use this to his advantage. He had his men kidnap Albert and then saved his life himself. When Albert returned home, he was told that the Count of Monte Cristo had saved him. With this act, Edmund managed to gain the trust of Mondego's family. Mondego decided to throw a party to celebrate Albert's birthday and invited everyone, including Edmund. Edmund attended the party, and no one recognized him because he appeared so rich and regal. He even danced with Mercedes, who mentioned that he reminded her of someone. Edmund denied being that person, but when he absent-mindedly twirled his hair, Mercedes noticed. It was a habit Edmund had from his past. Later, when Edmund left the party and sat in his wagon, Mercedes followed him. She recognized him and said that he was the same person. However, Edmund insisted that Edmond Dantes was dead and asked her to leave the wagon. Edmund devised another plan. He convinced the magistrate that he had found the treasure and that only the magistrate could help him retrieve it legally. The magistrate, known for his dishonesty, shared this information with Mondego. Excited by the opportunity to steal the treasure, Mondego sought the assistance of his old friend Danglars. However, Edmund anticipated their intentions. He knew they would try to deceive each other and divide the treasure among themselves. When the shipment containing the treasure arrived, Danglars betrayed Mondego. 2 boxes of treasure were taken by Danglars' men in a carriage. But Edmund had already arranged for his own accomplice, who was secretly the leader of a group of robbers. Edmund swiftly arrived with the police and had Danglars arrested for stealing the treasure. Edmund then confronted the magistrate, who was taking a steam bath. He questioned why the magistrate had lied to Mercedes many years ago, claiming that Edmund had been hanged and he is no more. The magistrate was bewildered by how Monte Cristo knew about this. Edmund explained that the magistrate and Mondego structured the plan so that Mondego and Mercedes would marry. The plan involved Mondego killing the magistrate's father, and in return, the magistrate would inform Mercedes of Edmund's execution so that Edmund will be no more in Mercedes' life. There was second motive behind this deceit. It was the magistrate's resentment towards his loyal father, who supported Napoleon Bonaparte. The magistrate feared that his father's allegiance to Napoleon would be revealed, resulting in the loss of his own job. The magistrate confessed to having his father murdered, but he believed Edmund could never prove it, nor would Mondego ever admit to it. Edmund, however, revealed that while Mondego may not confess, the magistrate's guilt was undeniable. The curtain lifted, revealing the police who had been listening to their conversation. The magistrate was arrested for conspiring to kill his father, mirroring the scene from 13 years ago when the magistrate had arrested Edmund in a wagon. Now, Edmund was finally exacting his revenge. In the next scene, Mercedes arrives at Edmund's house. Edmund urges her to leave, but she reveals that she knows he is Edmund because you know his full name, Edmond Dantes. She questions how he knew that Edmond Dantes was dead, as his surname was not widely known. Edmund then asks Mercedes why she didn't wait for him, as he suffered badly in jail every moment. Hatred fills his heart now, and he sees it as his treasure that no one should take away from him. This scene is filled with intense emotions, as Edmund carries a pain in her heart that seems incurable. He endured 13 years of torture without having committed any crime. However, Mercedes explains her side and shows him the same thread ring, indicating that she never took it off. Mercedes kisses and hugs Edmund, and they are reunited. Meanwhile, Mondego is now destitute, and the magistrate's father's murder is pinned on him. He plans to escape and asks Mercedes to join him. However, Mercedes decides not to go with him. Mondego, in anger, accepts that he and his son will leave. However, Mercedes reveals a shocking truth: Albert is Edmund's son. This revelation explains why she agreed to marry so quickly after hearing about Edmund's death, because she was pregnant. Mondego leaves in a fit of rage. Mondego eventually reaches a hiding place where the magistrate, danglers, and he plan to secure and hide Monte Cristo's treasure by stealing it. However, when he opens the box, he finds nothing but a king chess piece, which was same and given by Mondego when he planned Edmund's arrest. Suddenly, Edmund appears in his true form, alive and well. Mondego is left stunned and shocked to see Edmund standing before him. Mondego launches an attack on Edmund with a sword, but Edmund's skills as a swordsman have greatly improved, and he defeats Mondego with a single blow. At that moment, Albert arrives and attempts to attack Edmund. However, Mercedes and Jacopo also appear, and Mercedes reveals the truth to Albert: Edmund is his father, and Mondego was responsible for sending Edmund to jail under false accusations. Just as Mondego is about to shoot, Jacopo intervenes and shoots at Mondego's gun, causing the bullet to miss Mercedes' chest but hit her shoulder. Mondego manages to escape temporarily but returns to confront Edmund, seeking to end his life. A fierce sword fight ensues, and Edmund ultimately defeats Mondego. The scene shifts to 3 months later. Everyone finds themselves in Chateau d'If prison, but now Edmund has purchased the prison to ensure that no prisoner will ever be subjected to the same torturous conditions he endured. Edmund is now dedicated to using his treasure for the betterment of humanity, as Faria had advised him before passing away. This film delivers a beautiful message: true love has the power to find its way back. With this beautiful ending, movie concludes. If you like the explanation, please subscribe the channel and hit bell icon.